Welcome back to Beyond the Brief. Today, we're very, very fortunate to have a giant brain and great human in John Barnes. John is a author, writer, speaker, and unicorn, self-professed. And John, thanks so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about your past and what you're up to lately.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Great to be on. Yeah, unicorn is a mixed word kind of phrase, but my 5-year-old daughter and we just have an affinity for unicorns, so I just ran with it. But no, great question. I think I'm still trying to make sense of my background too. I really only had one thing I wanted to do my whole life, and that was be a car designer. So from the earliest childhood memories until my senior year in high school, I mean, car design was it. I applied to one school for one major and one place, no backup plans, nothing else I was going to do, and found myself at automotive design school, right? So up in Detroit, getting ready to dig in. And I kind of had a really disarming experience there, even though it was the greatest creative expression and like I'm around all my creative people. I had a revelation that fall that like, oh my gosh, like my gift is creativity. It's not cars. Cars are an expression of, but creativity is the actual thing. And it really disarmed me because I realized, hey, I can apply creativity to anything, anywhere. It's an ethos. It's not an application. It's not a thing that you do. It's something you are. And it really gave me pause to ask, do I want to go to like design med school for car design now that I've sort of had this soul unlocking moment? So long story short, I reset. I bailed out of automotive design, even though I had finally made it into the best, the best of the best. I'm here with all the world's best car designers. And I just didn't feel like it was my path anymore. Did not see that coming. I kind of came back and reset the deck back here to my home in Maryland. And over the course of, that was a couple years ago, mind you, over the course of that span since the 90s to today, I've had a lot of different careers, none of which make sense on paper, unless you sort of see that like John Barnes is weaving this creative thread through all different types of professions. I was in full-time youth ministry, working at a church. I was, entrepreneur, running my own content shop. I was at a law firm doing, marketing, creative, and comms with a bunch of lawyers, right? I was at an agency. I was a marketing consultant. I was in healthcare marketing. So I guess marketing is sort of like if I had to pick a thing that I do, that's the thing that I do. But my journey is very much one of self-discovery through applying creativity in all different kinds of ways and areas, even the unexpected ones like legal marketing.
John, I love that. I want to back up to some of this and ask you if you grew up in Germany, so you kind of skipped right over that. Is that right? You started your original path in Germany?
Yeah, so I was a military kid. So, sort of my childhood memories are like growing up in Europe. So, the Alps, Oktoberfest, these are all things that are part of my childhood experience. I came back to the States, it was the mid 80s, came back to the States, and I sort of half grew up in Germany, half grew up for the rest of my life here in Maryland. But I think it was really formative in shaping my fluid understanding of culture in the sense that, hey, you can have things that are important to you, but express them in a lot of different ways. And you can create these nodes of culture, right? I'm in a German small town in Bavaria, like having a beer with locals at a thing. There's not a corporate logo in sight apart from the beer thing. But then I'll be over here and it's just like, geez, I'm at Target or I'm in healthcare marketing and, HIPAA compliance. And there's all these cultural nodes. And I think growing up in the military and overseas helped me sort of sit loosely in the saddle related to the culture that I find myself to realize, hey, the way that I've done it or that my tribe does it, that's a way, but maybe not the way. And once you've seen a lot of different modes of doing things, you realize, hey, man, we're kind of all making it up as we go based on the culture we find ourselves.
I love it. And you mentioned that you started off at an automotive design school, then you went to theology school, a Bible school, and then went on to get your master's in modern studies. What is modern studies? Help us uneducated folks out on what's modern studies mean.
Sure. Yeah. So I did the old art school to Bible college to master's degree track, which literally no one has done. And I've never heard of anyone else taking that path. I went, my undergraduate, is in Bible and theology, right? So if you're going to work with kids in a church, like be a pastor, you got to learn that stuff. So had a great time. transferred one whopping credit from my art school over to that. But after I graduated a couple years, I was kind of itching to get back into learning and higher ed. And I found this really, really cool program. This is at Loyola University, Maryland, called Modern Studies. And it's very hard to describe. It's a combination of history, philosophy, and communications. It's asynchronous, and it's really about exploring big ideas, right? What is meaning? Where do we find it? How does it manifest? What is the role of people and ideas in shaping culture? And, sometimes I've had class on existentialism. Other times I'd have, classes on history. And I just really enjoyed the kind of eclectic grab bag approach. So I highly recommend undergraduate and graduate, anything you can find in liberal studies or culture or modern studies is what mine was called, because it gives you the tools in the toolbox to think about how culture is shaped, how we make the things of the interconnectedness about our lives, right? AI, anything that you can throw in the mix, that understanding and that ability to both understand the historical background and the philosophical impacts, those are tools in the modern marketer's toolbox. That's what you need, especially now that like once a month something radical changes in marketing and everybody's trying to keep up, right? So being a nimble, agile thinker that understands both the past and the present so that you can predict the future, I mean, that's where it's at. I had a great time in that program and highly recommend, if people can find one like that, to take it for sure.
So one of the things that strikes me about you, just the little I know you, is that you're like insanely curious and just a student of humanity, really. And interestingly, any of the best creative folks I've been around or best strategists I've been around are that way in their own unique flavor, right? It's very much the flavors of that make great stuff come to life. As an author and speaker, what led you down that path? Like what led you to say, you know what, I'm going to put this down and share it, or this is going to be kind of one of the topics I get, build a knowledge and understanding that I'm a great speaker at.
Yeah, yeah, great question. I wrote my first book because I had to. It was bursting from my eyeballs, and if I didn't put pen to paper, I was going to explode. So my first one was really an experiment. It was published, so it was picked up. But looking back, I mean, obviously, when you do your first book, you would do a lot of things different. But I really wrote it in a sort of state of catharsis for professionals who were where I was maybe 10 years ago when I wrote that book, for folks in their early 20s who were trying to figure out, so what do I do next? How do I map a professional path in my career, especially when my background doesn't make sense, right? And if anybody's background doesn't make sense, and if nobody's qualified to do what they're doing, it's this guy, right? It's me. So I really sort of wrote it as a young professional's handbook to really get out the lessons that I had been learning over that decade time span, and be a helpful tool in the toolbox for people who I could see, asking the questions that I asked back when I was that age. So I sort of wrote the first one because I had to. My second book, Brand Thyself, is on personal branding. I wrote it for utility purposes. Personal branding was just as a thing becoming a thing, and I really wanted to sort of get ahead of it. And I realized a lot of the tools in the toolbox of personal branding, it's a lot of marketing and brand messaging and human understanding. So I wrote that as a sort of handbook for people who were probably the age of the parent age of the people that had bought my first book. But it's for grown-ups, and it's a personal branding how-to book. I just wrote my third book, How to Become a Marketing Consultant, this year. So this is the hot one that I'm sort of promoting this year on my summer book tour. But I wrote this one for discoverability. I mean, sit down and Google how to become a marketing consultant. Hopefully you see my face all over it. But I really wrote it as a sort of entrepreneurial guide to help people who are like, hey, I got a lot of experience in marketing. I'm kind of bored with what I'm doing. I want to break out and do my own thing. I don't want to be in the whole like hourly work, paycheck to paycheck, managing social channels like everybody has at one point. I sort of figured out how to do that and how to create a sustainable business around it, and wrote this book as a sort of handbook for how to stand up and run and scale and not die doing a marketing consulting thing as a solo or as a side hustle. So that's my most recent book. Nothing else on the tables for now. That's keeping me off the streets and busy. So but really enjoy writing. I felt like I just had to get this stuff out. I can't say there was any other particular driver.
Got it. you do a phenomenal job of the brand identification in it. So you've used a lot of your lessons that are in your books. The unicorn that's behind you. If you turn on the internet and search for marketing consultant, you'll see that, and it's fantastic because anytime I see it, I instantly think of you, and it takes me right to that place.
Hmm.
I imagine that is part of what comes out in creative threads, because it's not about what you wear. It's not about apparel or fabrics. It's about the common thread in the way to bring brands to life. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the challenge, especially with our explosion of marketing tools, and every day there's like a new AI thing you're supposed to plug in and use, and blah, 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 blah. You know, at the end of the day, everything that we're doing is humans connecting to other humans, mediating some sort of problem or opportunity, right? You have this problem, this thing helps. You have this desire, this thing helps, or service, or whatever it is. So at the end of the day, for all the AI and all the tech and all the enterprise Salesforce integration, blah, 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 people are trying to get to somewhere they're not, and marketers are the brokers of those things. So I think part of the lesson of personal branding that I put together was like, hey man, relax on the Instagram this and the sponsored that and the blah, blah, blah. Like, who are you? What makes you different? And how do your skills and experience connect to the thing that keeps your audience up at night? What keeps them up at night? What do you do? Connect the dots, right? Your personal brand is just, it's like a tunnel, right? It's not the car in the tunnel. It's the tunnel that connects two different worlds. And world one is your audience. World two is you, and your personal brand is the thing that connects them. So I tried to dig into that model and help people relieve some of the pressure of like, oh my gosh, I got to have all these tools and content and everything. But like, hey, back up, get 30,000 feet, drill down until you have what are the three things that make you unique as a marketer?
Yeah.
Right. And it's very hard because otherwise everybody goes full resume mode and they're like, I'm going to load up with my tools, Adobe Creative Suite and Canva and blah, 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 blah. And you're listing out all these tools. Like, that's a feature function problem, right? Like stop listing specs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What is the real benefit? What problem do you solve for people? And how do you establish a reputation for being the person that solves that problem?
Talk to us a little bit about positioning, because one of the things I'll share my view to give you a sense. In agency positioning, I'll use that as the example. Um, Agencies labor over positioning, and this struggle to find something truly unique. And I'm constantly reminding our team, as well as any other agency that I talk to, any leader, your uniqueness really comes through your culture and the way you look and feel every day. And the fact that you do ads, the fact that you do the same stuff that everybody else does, the kind of deliverables are largely the same and not a commodity because the way you do it is different, but in the same, similar in many respects, but the difference comes in the culture. So don't worry about a line that has three different words than anybody else on earth. Do you give a similar kind of thinking? Is that line up for you? And does that relate also to kind of personal brands?
It's a great question, and it's part of the reason everybody needs a good agency or agency consultative stakeholders in the process, because sometimes you're just too in your own head, right? And you sit down with a blank piece of paper and you or your clients like, what makes us different is our people. Like, oh my gosh, if one more person says what makes us different is our people, like I'm going to throw up a little bit because everybody has said it. It doesn't mean anything. And the people that lead with it the most are the people that only use stock images. They don't even show their real people,
Right.
except for the C-suite, right? So I think part of it is, yeah, really figuring out. And to your point earlier, you have to be a little playful, a little imaginative, and you have to take some risks because sometimes you don't know who you are until you get out there, sort of like a prism. Until you shine something through it, you don't know what colors are going to shine through. And I've had some clients in the past where we ended up at humor. Humor and silliness was how we differentiated, right? Like imagine a finance firm, but like
Yeah.
everybody on the website is pictures of them fishing and like having fun and, being goofy, right? It's just like, that's not going to work for everybody, but that's what worked for them because we were
Yeah.
differentiating and doubling down on things about their culture that was different from everyone else. But you're right. At the end, like, how much can banks differentiate? What are y'all doing, banks? You giving away a free pen, a certain fixed percent APR, like who knows what, like it's the same 10 financial products over and over again. So how are you going to be differentiated? And you can't say we care about the community because we're in it. You can't say that. You can't say we're different because our people make us different. Like you got to push and you got to be a little playful and creative, and you have to be ready to throw stuff at the wall and for it not to stick and for everybody to be
Yeah.
okay with it. Because what's better, irrelevance or some wrong trajectories, right? As long as you can fix it, um, and it's not like terribly offensive,
Yeah.
you got to play. You got to have some room to play because you don't know what's going to resonate, and no amount of market research can tell you what's going to fully resonate with your brand. You got to experiment.
Yeah, I love the way you brought that out to the clearest point, because it's you saying it isn't what makes it; it's doing it in the way that I'll butcher Maya Angelou's saying of, it's not what you say, it's how you make people feel. And so when I say, it's the culture, it's the way people feel about the way you work together and the experience they have with you and the richness of like, because you're right, whether it's checking accounts, which are the same everywhere, or a pharma company where it's regulated to the, you're going to have bad bathroom breaks. It's, all the kind of stuff that's in the small type. But the way that the organization culturally connects with you and the consistency of that's part of the magic that really helps it stand apart. Um, you touched on AI, like, and I jokingly call it the rush to the mean. It's the new mean. It's the new clip art, right? It's the latest homogenization of work, and it's just now faster. Um, and I'll even take it one step further. I just saw yesterday a great, fantastic thing that I'm sharing with anybody that'll listen, and it said that the algorithms are showing in real time a different take on the outcomes that happened in the world for me, for you, and for everybody else. So the distribution of information and the way that that's coming through is affected so dramatically. We have to have a completely different filter in today's world. And same is true on ads, right? The same is true on personalization and AI. Talk a little bit about the way you're seeing that.
Yeah, look, who's not trying to either be an AI innovator or just not worry about AI stealing their job, or just worrying, am I using enough? Am I stuffing enough AI into my marketing, tech stack? Like, oh my gosh. Like I think we're in an interesting point. And as soon as people hear this, I'm sure whatever I'm about to say is going to be irrelevant. But, AI as a high-speed adoption, easy, low friction implementation, and basically cheap and or free adoption level allows for the opening of AI to, take hold everywhere. And when it does, sort of like if everyone is driving with their headlights on, like it's a little safer, but like everyone is driving with their headlights on, right? So
Yeah.
I think I'm neither in a position of, all in super forward facing bleeding edge adoption, but I'm also not in the camp of, hey, abstain, like, don't use AI. It's, it's the devil or whatever. I think there's something in between, which is a combination of thoughtful understanding, not just of what AI tools and technologies to use, but what impact does an AI saturated lifestyle have on the people you're trying to reach? And how can you change your positioning and your marketing to speak to this, let's be honest, vacuum of authenticity, inability to distinguish fact from fiction, oversaturation of images, misinformation, right? Like those are not AI tools. Like which tool can solve that, right? They can't swipe a credit card and get Jasper or something else to solve that for you. Those are human, cultural, people and epistemological changes that have happened throughout the culture, and they've happened in a year and a half, right?
Right.
So that's where that liberal studies, cultural understanding, modern studies sort of mindset comes in, because you got to understand what is the impact of this technology on people as a whole and be able to forecast what's going to happen. Now, do I need an AI tool to like write content faster? Yes. Love it. Use it. That's great. Reread it. It's pretty good. All right. Sure. Like, oh my gosh. Right. And so to me, it's from a practical perspective, it is the evolution of where marketing technology was going for AI and marketing. But it's also not like, hey, this is the answer to all of our problems. Let's adopt everything there is, because just adoption of AI tools isn't solving the problem of AI. And I
Yeah.
think the problem of AI is related to cultural mega changes. It's not related to how to write a blog post faster.
Well, and I constantly remind anybody that I talk with about it that it's a tool, right? It's a tool. It's not a brain. It's not. It doesn't have the senses. The common refrain that I stole from somebody, I don't even remember who, is, it can't feel the sand between your toes. And that's a uniquely human perspective that we can instantly be telegraphed, transformed to, or transported to. And there may be a day where some of that starts to emerge, but for now it's very much a tool. It's a better pen, or a better typewriter, or a better research resource, but it can't do it for you in the way that you really wanted to, and it with the intent that you really have, in part because of the way we communicate with it. And so there's lots to yet come. Talk a little bit about, because we advise clients all the time to take their brand beyond the use occasion, right? If, like, an example, that I worked with Jack Daniels, and Jack Daniels has the benefit of being a highly regarded brand. And yet one of the things we did was campaigns that were mini campaigns to put it back in the cultural kind of conversation outside of the use occasion. So we did this research and found that, over 100,000 people each election write in Jack Daniels. And it's like, come on, I mean, I get it, but like, that's, so we literally did a poster series where we encourage people to vote when they have a drink, but when they actually do go to the polls, that they make their vote count. And
Right.
that gave us a way to have participation in something that we weren't picking sides. We weren't, like, calling anybody stupid too much. Uh, we were kind in our criticism,
Right.
but staying on how today, in the pace of change, because you just said it, AI has changed the ecosystem that we live in a year and a half faster than any other change we've encountered. How do we as marketers stay in touch with the common consumer as they move through this day and age?
Yeah, and I love that story too, because that's playfulness,
Right.
right? We found this thing. What does voting and Jack Daniels have to do with each other? Literally nothing. You can't bring booze in the voting booth. I've tried. Okay, they don't let you. Right. So how do you connect the dots for this thing? And so that's a great example. And I think that brands that are able to be a little playful, push a little bit, and be appropriately risky, they're going to succeed in that, because good messaging is good messaging no matter
Yeah.
how it gets to people. I think the thing with AI is that there's some changes that are settling in that are permanent,
Yeah.
right? Look at AI and search, right? 50% of search is not ending in a click for SEO. That is the most disruptive thing to hit people. I mean, SEO folks, like, I feel your pain. Okay. Like, how are you going to measure that? Where are you going to measure it? Which tool's going to be able to track, your search performance and LLMs and all this thing. But then other times, I think a lot of impact related to AI is a boomerang, and it's going way out here, and then eventually it's going to come back. And I think some of those areas are determining fact from fiction and news, authenticity of images, and cutting through the middle of, like, research to just get to a result, but realizing part of research is the thing that makes the end result matter. So
Yeah.
I don't know what exactly, I'm just kind of rambling here, but those are things I think we are going to see some come back to us like a boomerang, and
Yeah.
we're going to reclaim or re-pursue modalities and communications and experiences that were pre-AI, because people will crave that authenticity, that realism, and that trustworthiness. But at the same time, man, you sit down to Google search and you're like, where do I buy a 42-inch, two-cut Craftsman lawnmower blade? And it gives you, like, here's how to do it, right? Like, who can argue with that? It's like Amazon Prime next day. Like, you're going to go back and get rid of Amazon Prime next day? Have you ever used it? And all of a sudden you got that exact thing the next day. So I think we're in an interesting place, because we can see some stuff settling in, and the other things, like, I don't know how far they're going to go out until they come back. But I think ultimately these are questions about the human experience, not technology.
Yeah. No, I agree. Um, so beyond the brief is just that, it's conversation with marketers about, like, where they find the inspiration for work that matters or breaks through. And it's beyond the brief, because a lot of times, as hard as we try to get the brief to nail it, A lot of times we get into it and we're like, oh, look at that idea. That's where we got to go. We got to chase that, right? Tell us, do you have any stories that you'd like to share about where you've stumbled on something that wasn't on the brief that just like hit you out of nowhere and made the work really powerful?
So in my book, I've got a whole section on, dealing with unexpected client challenges. And one of them is called shiny object syndrome, right? So you do all this work, you finally get to your meeting, you got the whole, C-suite in there, you go through this really well-reasoned brief, and then, the CEO, whoever's like, yeah, well, we were just at XYZ conference and they did this thing. I want to do that. Right? Shiny object syndrome, and none of your strategy and all that research matters. So there's sometimes where we have to push and double down on what are the chains of connection from this need or goal to this idea or concept, and double down on that and push back to execute to that strategy. Other times there's been briefs on like research I put together that I thought was great, pitched it, and then the CEO had a totally random idea, but it turned out I was like, no, that's actually better than mine. So you can't really know where expertise and wisdom and revelation is going to sort of come from, but you have to do the groundwork. You have to be playful and imaginative, and you have to listen for, great ideas from unexpected sources. And some of my unexpected sources are like books and movies, driving around, watching things my kids are watching on TV. Like if you're listening, there's a lot of great ideas out there. But typically where it doesn't come from is just staring at a blank Word document on your computer, right? Like you got to get out and be and exist and look around and be observant. And then those things will start to come to you and you can put them in boxes and organize them.
Yeah, I've had the uh, absolute, good fortune to have worked with some really amazing creative folks along the way. And when I was at Hal Riney and Partners, we interviewed a guy from Wyden, and I remember being fascinated with like, the Wyden mystique and saying, why, what's the magic? He said, well, the work is always on the wall so that it's out in the open so everybody can see it and push it. And I said, okay, well, how's that? Like, what else is there? Like, that's not, we kind of do that. And sometimes we're way off. And he's like, oh, we are too. I mean, like, so I give him credit for owning that. But he said, argue about ideas endlessly, never argue about people. And I thought, what a great insight, because the number of times I've felt that A-type personality issue around getting to the strategies or getting to final work, and you start to get vested in the bias factor, and it gets in the way of actually like getting to what you're trying to do. Do you have any other tips in that vein that kind of builds on that thought?
I think there's an interesting paradox about creative ideas where if the more fluency of ideas you have, the better they get. But the longer you do marketing, the more you realize that success is an exercise of elimination. Right? So you
Yeah.
have to produce fluency of ideas. You can't just sit down in a meeting and write the first five things, because you're going to have a great idea the next day at Starbucks and be like, oh my gosh, what would be awesome, right? All my best ideas have come to me, not at work, not in front of a computer, usually driving, right? So
Yeah.
it's not that way for everybody, but that's part of the observant thing. So you have to produce a fluency of ideas and be someone that can, although creative, discipline yourself to execute volume for creative output. But then when you do it, you realize here's 17 great ideas. I'm way too into number 7 and 6, and I hope our client picks those. Client really likes 2 and maybe could be talked into 7, but then XYZ stakeholder over here really loves number 17, right? So you got to be ready to eliminate things and to kill off those things that you might love or really be invested in, and you got to experiment, right? So it's this sort of two-sided coin that is both fluency and volume, but execution and elimination at the same time.
Yeah. No, there's, great parodies out there of the agency dynamic and client interaction dynamic. You've probably seen some of them, but one of them just takes it way over the top in that, the client is in their mind, the voiceover in their mind is, oh, they're finally on the last idea, which of course is going to be the one that they like best. They never would show that one first. And the agency's going, I hope he didn't realize that we put the best idea in the middle. And it's like that whole like dynamic of the interplay between the client and agency versus actually surrounding the idea and being receptive to it and really stepping back and saying, "What's the audience we're trying to appeal to here, care about?" And instead of the politics and the bias factor. That's fantastic. Um, what's the best advice you've ever received? And concurrently, what's the worst advice you've ever received in the marketing realm?
Oh, interesting. Man, I've been very fortunate to, by accident usually, have been surrounded with really smart people. And honestly, like I got to where I am by just watching what they did and copying it. Right. So I think that's I think the greatest, um, I don't know if it's a particular lesson from a particular person, but have sound strategy and do something different is at the end of the day, to stand out. You can't be another bank that says what makes us different is is our people. So you have to do something different. And even if wrong, I'd rather do something different that was wrong than the same thing, which was meh. So I think that's an interesting paradigm, and I think a
Yep.
lot of the best marketing people and leaders that I've known and I've looked up to have lived in this tension between finding the safe thing about this brand and this totally over the top way to express that, and smushing them both together. And that's
Yeah.
what a great agency client relationship is. I think if I could go back and tell my younger self through all the years and all the brands, I'd be like, look, if you have cool people you work with and your clients have money and do something interesting for work, man, you have made it. Like, that is great, because most times you have to pick two out of the three of those, right?
Right.
Got a lot of money, does something really boring. Got a lot of money, does something interesting, hate working with them, right?
Hmm.
So if you can check all three boxes, man, savor that, really embody it, and live really enjoying the process. And I think part of the grind of marketing is that constant stress and tension about keeping up to speed, knowing every AI thing so you can not sound like an
Yeah.
idiot in the next meeting, right? But at the same time, it's like, man, cherish what you got, because marketing is everything right now. Everything is marketing. So
Yeah.
if you can do even just a little bit of things good in marketing, like,
Yeah.
have fun and get ready to be useful. That's my advice to my younger self and to the next
Right.
generation.
Any worst advice?
Man, I don't think I've been given really bad advice. I cannot think of something, or clearly for my benefit, I forgot it. So no, I don't think I have any bad advice. I think if I had to say, is there a trend out there that that I'm not super wild about? It is the vision that AI success is about tool implementation, and not throwing the baby with the bathwater, but missing the forest for the trees, that it's actually a human experience and a human culture. That's what's changing. AI is, yes, it's a thing, but we're not going to win in whatever this AI thing is by just adopting all AI everywhere all the time,
Right.
right? So there's a human experience to it. And the more you can be in touch with the human parts of our experience, the better you're going to be at the tool stuff.
Yeah. One of the best points of advice I got was from a strategist in Vienna that I worked with, who was part of the Ogilvy system. And Werner Kleinscheck's his name. And he said, um, once you've written down several territories or strategic directions, circle the one that's the most obvious and go there first. And I thought, what an interesting thing, because when I look back at some of the work that I've done or been around or that I admired most, and, I've judged the FE finals and, the work that I've admired there and stuff like that, it's almost always like a really plainly obvious, simple human truth. Like, it's not really hard. It's not hidden in it's not something that, is a new DNA splinter that nobody thought of. And I remember that, it resonates with me even today. I think it just really, it's true. It's the best ideas tend to be very simple and obvious, almost obvious to the point where people they turn away from them, which is a shame. So, um, as we you know think of your next book or your next speech, what thing or things do you want to make sure our listeners hear about the John Barnes unicorn story?
Yeah. Oh, I know I'm going to write my next book. I don't know what it's going to be about. I think I'm waiting for that idea to present itself. I might get totally out of the practical business genre and write something fiction, like a deep metaphor, sort of fictional narrative. I don't know yet. So thankfully, I'm letting this book breathe a little while before. Funny thing about this book, I spent a year just on the table of contents. What's going to be in this book? Then this last spring, I woke up one morning and I wrote the whole book in 5 days. Right? So there's a lot of creative output that's sharpening the axe, waiting, sharpening the axe. I probably could have read it faster, but man, once the muse hit, I got that groove because I put my table of contents together from a list of my own experience, things that people were Googling, and stuff I knew needed to be in it regardless. And that's how I put the table of contents together. Once I knew what was in it, man, it just flowed. And I just typed all morning, every morning for 5 days, and it was done. Right. So maybe I'll do something about how to write your first book. Maybe I'll do something about, content creation for influencer something. I don't know, but probably not going to write about AI. I'm fine to not be an AI influencer expert unless I have a chance to really speak to the culture human side and then weave AI in. But either way, there are no documents on my computer for my next book. I'm a blank slate. Let's see what happens.
I hope if you do write how to write your first book, that you also include in there how to determine if you should.
Right.
Because I feel like there's a lot of books out there, the great cover, really well designed, and you get it and you're like, oh, what have I just done to myself?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
funny.
Chris, check this out. I started to write that book, and obviously, if anyone's sitting down to write a book and you already know the table of contents, are you going to load it into ChatGPT and let it do the whole thing? I was 2 chapters in. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write every word without AI in this book, every single piece written directly from me, my 10 fingers, and this computer. And I did it, and I stuffed it right in the forward. I was like, look, man, this is straight from the heart. No AI. I 100% wrote this for you. Then, ironically, I dumped the whole manuscript into Notebook LM, Google's whatever.
Yep.
And I was like, give me a podcast of people talking about this book. And it produced this podcast of 2 AI people talking about my book and how it wasn't written by AI and how refreshing that was. And I thought that was hilariously ironic. So really enjoyed that. But yeah.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, maybe a clue on your next book will be in this next question. So Hollywood just called and they're going to do a film on you, a biopic. What's the name of the film? Who's going to play you, or what's the plot or theme?
Yes. Easy. I got it. It's called Never Let 'Em Know Your Next Move, featuring Nate Bargatze as me, as John Barnes. I have been told I look like him many, many times, including once when we went to go see him not too long ago. And I think so he would play me as a sort of unassuming creative person stuck in a non-creative role, and through a series of bizarre activities, meeting strangers, going through the hero's journey, unearths a truth about himself that helps others in a big way. I think that's what it would be like. I would love for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to have a cameo. I would also really like somebody who is in Lord of the Rings, I think, to have a brief cameo, maybe some cast from Harry Potter, but primarily, yeah, this is a Nate Bargatze heavy dialogue kind of film. It's called Never Let 'Em Know Your Next Move, in theaters spring 2026.
That's your secret move to get any table in LA, right?
That's right. That's right.
That's
Nate Bargatze
fantastic.
is here for his table.
So John, if anybody of our listeners want to reach out, what's the best way to find you?
Sure. For all my book universe and everything that we talked about, thejohnbarnes.com is the best place to find me. I'm on social and all that sort of thing, but just go to my website. You'll get it from there. And there's links to all the stuff that we've talked about off that site.
John, thank you a million for being here. As I said, the unicorn stands out. It reminds me every time I see it. The book is fantastic. Thanks for putting it out there in the world. There's great information in it, and our listeners and I are very thankful you've taken this time with us today. And with that, we'll wrap up another episode of Beyond the Brief. John, thanks again, and until next time. I hope there's a next time. Actually, that's the thing. When you get your next book out, we'll have you back.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to return. Thanks for having me.